When you look at your voting record and the issues that are important to you as spelled out on your website, most of them are traditional Democratic issues, capital D, expanding healthcare access, abortion rights, LGBTQ rights, Path for Dreamers, and on, environmentalism, green energy. That sounds like a Democrat to me, no?
Well, I know this is really hard for lots of folks, especially in DC. But what's important to me is to not be tethered by the partisanship that dominates politics today. And I think Americans are tired of it. I think Arizonans are tired of it. What I'm interested in is working on all those issues that you just mentioned that I care deeply about and that I believe my constituents care deeply about. But I want to work on them in a way that is productive, that is free from the trappings of the pull of the political system. You know, the national political parties have pulled our politics farther to the edges than I've ever seen. I want to remove some of that, kind of that poison from our politics. I want to get back to actually just working on the issues, working together to try and solve these challenges.
And one of the big complaints I hear from conservatives, from Republicans, is Democrats just don't take border security seriously. They just don't. Do you agree with that sentiment? And do you think there is an actual path forward there? Democrats are still going to have the majority in the next Senate. You can still get this on the floor of the Senate if you want.
Well, as a native Arizonan who was born and raised near the southern border, I can tell you unequivocally that the federal government has failed its duty in the last 40 years.
Not just Democrats.
It's just everyone. The federal government has failed here. And places like Arizona, front lines of this crisis, have been paying the price every single day since then. So for us, this isn't just a talking point of Team A versus Team B. This is our life every day. The reality is that when folks say, you know, we've got to just provide a legal path to citizenship for Dreamers, which I support wholeheartedly, these kids are Americans in all but name. So when folks say we've got to do that, I agree. And when folks say we've got to secure the border, of course I agree. You know, my state is suffering from the failure to do so for 40 years. So this is a perfect example of why I'm so frustrated with partisanship that has gripped our nation, and the parties are pulling folks away. It's not either or, it's and. Both of those concerns are real and valid, and we as a government have a duty to solve both of those concerns.
You're up for re-election in 2024. This move means, I suppose, that you're not going to be running in the Democratic primary for the Senate seat?
Well, I know this will probably be disappointing to folks, but I'm actually not even thinking about electoral politics or talking about that at all right now.
But doesn't this increase the likelihood that your run for re-election will be tougher because you will not only have a Republican opponent, you may even have a Democratic opponent?
You know, I don't make decisions based on what the easy road or the tough road is. I have always tried to make decisions based on what I think is right. And for me, it's very important that we have a discussion at home in Arizona and here in the nation's capital about reducing the partisanship and just focus on solving the challenges that we face in America. The challenges we face are great. They're significant. We cannot solve them by using partisan attacks. We cannot solve them through a partisan lens. And I want to be a part of having that discussion and showing that there is a different way.
Would you ever run for president?
No.
Never?
I don't want to be president.
There are two independents who already caucus with the Democrats, Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Angus King of Maine. Lisa Murkowski, who's a Republican but ran in a previous election as an independent, is also somebody whose independence is noted. Are those three models at all for what you're doing? Are there other independents? Teddy Roosevelt in the Bull Moose Party, is there anyone you look to as a guide, as a mentor, as a role model when it comes to what you're doing?
You know, Jake, it probably won't surprise you when I tell you I'm not trying to be like anyone else. What I'm trying to do is be true to my values and the values of my state. So, you know, I think everyone should make their own decisions about where they fit or where they don't fit. I'm going to keep doing exactly what I do, which is just stay focused on the work, and ignore all the noise.
Here with me now is somebody who knows a thing or two about going his own way, Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator, first, you are an independent. She is now the third official independent of the U.S. Senate, joining you and Angus King of Maine. What do you think of her decision, and also what you just heard in her interview with Jake?
I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Senator Sinema. She has her reasons. Dana, I happen to suspect that it's probably a lot to do with politics back in Arizona. I think the Democrats there are not all that enthusiastic about somebody who helps sabotage some of the most important legislation that protects the interests of working families and voting rights and so forth. So I think it really has to do with her political aspirations for the future in Arizona. But for us, I think nothing much has changed in terms of the functioning of the U.S. Senate. The good news is that we now have 51 votes. We'll have a majority on committees. It means that we can go forward and start protecting the interests of working families and deal with the reality that we are increasingly living in an oligarchy where the billionaire class and large corporations control almost every aspect of our country. So I would hope very much that with this new majority, Democrats will sit down and start fighting for the needs of ordinary Americans.
So I want to talk about some of those issues in a second. But first, you were a very important figure on the campaign trail for progressives ahead of the midterms, as you normally are. I'm sure you're going to be campaigning for candidates in 2024. The outgoing Arizona Democratic Party official, one of them says that he expects Democrats will run their own candidate against her. Is that a good idea? Would you support a Democratic opponent against Senator Sinema?
I support progressive candidates all over this country, people who have the guts to take on powerful special interests. I don't know what's going to be happening in Arizona. We'll see who they nominate, but certainly that's something I will take a hard look at.
Does she have the guts to take on powerful special interests?
No, she doesn't. She is a corporate Democrat who has, in fact, along with Senator Manchin, sabotaged enormously important legislation.
I want to talk about a major deadline to fund the government, and that is Friday. There's still no deal. Would you support another short-term extension instead of a larger bill to fund the government? And how worried are you about the government shutting down?
Short-term extensions are just a temporary solution to the ongoing crisis we face. Clearly, what I worry about is Republican efforts to hold hostage next year, if we don't get an omnibus bill passed, to hold hostage the government in order to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and that I will vigorously oppose. You got a lot of seniors out there who are not making it on Social Security today, a lot of working people who are approaching retirement, who have nothing in the bank. I don't want to see Social Security or Medicare cut. I will oppose that vigorously.
While I have you, you've been in Congress a long time, the House before the Senate. There certainly have been some notable bipartisan pieces of legislation that have passed and been signed into law, but arguably funding the government is up there, maybe even the top responsibility of you and your fellow members of Congress. Why does this keep happening?
Well, I think it's happening right now because Republicans see it as an opportunity to hold us hostage and get demands that under normal circumstances they would not. Look, they have not been shy about making it clear. They want to cut Social Security, they want to cut Medicare, they want to cut Medicaid. And what they're saying is, hey, we are prepared to allow the United States government to default on our payments, bring the entire world perhaps into an economic crisis,
Senator,
unless you give us what you want.
I hear what you're saying about the differences right now, but over the past many years, Democrats and Republicans in charge, funding the government has just not happened, and we've been at this crisis point at the end of the year so many times. But I want to move on to a couple more issues that I know that you care about. One is the record-breaking $858 billion defense funding bill. The House passed that this week. The Senate is going to vote on it. You voted against the NDAA, the defense bill, last time around. Will you do so again?
Yes, I think I will. Look, we have 85 million Americans who have no health insurance. We have 600,000 people who are homeless. We have a dysfunctional healthcare system, dysfunctional childcare system where working parents are paying $15,000 a year on average for childcare. We have got to start protecting the needs of working families. The Pentagon is the one major agency of government which has never been independently audited. There is massive waste and fraud and cost overruns within that agency. So I think we can have the strong defense that we need without spending the huge amount of money that we're currently spending on the military.